want to welcome you all to week 6 and just say that I just need to address a few things for us this week. So I think a lot of you actually enjoyed learning about ancient Israel and Judaism, but you also struggle a lot with the paper in particular. This was the most difficulty I noticed for students, and part of it I think is I needed to clarify my instructions a little bit better, but I did have enough students that actually followed the instructions that made me realize that I did have instructions written that could be understood. But I'll tell you what I think is the root of what kind of caused a lot of some of the problems. And the reason why I need to mention this as well is, I'll be blunt, if I really graded the papers the way I should have this week, many would have had much lower grades than you have. And so, I mean, my whole point for what I want the papers to be is for you to put some time and think about what you're writing about. And so, but a lot of you were just actually did not address the instructions at all. And I think there's a reason why. So let me say, first of all, when I talk about writing what secular historians want, or secular history, do you know what the word secular means? If you saw it and you didn't, did you not Google it or look it up? Use a dictionary. So that I think that was one of the problems. I think a lot of you, it's not a word that you will use in your life until you actually care about topics dealing with religion and politics or academia. So it makes sense that it would be kind of like a word that you didn't really understand. So basically it's dealing with non-religious matters. That's the oversimplification of it. And so we had two options of writing your paper, to talk about ancient Israel compared and contrast to secular history and the narrative that's in the Bible, or the difference between ancient Israel and Judaism. And that's the one where I think I could have clarified a little bit better for you guys. So first of all, let me address the first part. The other issue I think that many of you have is that you are very religious, which I understand, and you simply didn't really like addressing some of the points that historians made about the Bible. I could be wrong, but I just want to say something. I had to talk about this to my other class, and we finally worked it out. If you remember, I told you, just like when we covered prehistory and the topic of evolution came up, I don't require you to believe any of those things. I just need you to understand about them. Basically, I want you to understand various views on history. And you stating those doesn't mean that you believe in them. This isn't that complicated for a lot of people until historians critique something that's personal to people. And this isn't just in the case of religion. Nationalists all around the world have histories about their origins of their people or ethnicity that historians also call into question, and this always causes problems. I just also want to remind you, and I think I might have said this before, that there are many religious clergymen, Christian pastors and priests and rabbis who know that modern archaeology and historians don't see proof for the conquest written in the book of Joshua, and that there are many questions regarding the Davidic kingdom of ancient Israel. And so again, this is hard if you are raised as a fundamentalist, meaning, or evangelical tradition, raised in a tradition that I certainly understand, that the text's message is as holy as it is historically accurate. But there's a lot. I mean, you'd be surprised that many of many pastors and rabbis believe that the text is holy, but not necessarily that the history is literal truth. They don't necessarily always kind of articulate this to their congregations and synagogues. For more conservative branches, this is just not up for discussion as well. So again, I realize it was a sensitive topic, but what I wanted you to do, what I want you to remember about these papers is I don't mind you saying your own opinions in them necessarily, but I need you to address the material that we've covered. That's always something that I want you to always kind of put in your brain. Like when you're writing the paper, really think about what the question is really asking, and then demonstrate knowledge through the material that we covered, like what you have to say about it. In the sense, you're taking each week a section, and then you're retelling it to me, demonstrating to me that you really have a handle on what we covered, regardless of what your own views about the world are. You can believe that aliens are responsible for a particular civilization. There's many people who have those ideas. I'm not going to mock or scoff them. I think that I have some friends that are historians that kind of embrace some ideas that wouldn't fly in the classroom. The reason why they don't mention them is that they don't have any proof. I mean, we all have certain things that we gravitate towards that don't necessarily have the evidence that would be required for people to really, on a major scale, buy into it. I don't know if that's the right way to put it. But nonetheless, I teach consensus historical views, and so that's what I wanted to see on the Ancient Israel paper. Now, if you did the paper on ancient Israel compared to Judaism, many of you actually got confused by that, and I can understand why. So I wrote to you many of you responses without, I don't know if that's helping simplify it enough. Basically, there's ancient Israel and its temple, right, and the animal sacrifices and the priesthood, and the north ends up getting destroyed, northern Israel. Judea is where we get the term for Jews. During the time of Jesus, there's various branches. There's Sadducees, there's Essenes, there are the Pharisees. The temple gets destroyed. And essentially what we think of, when we use the term Judaism, we're really mainly referring to rabbinic Jewish religion that emerges after the post-temple periods. Okay? So the Talmud that we talked about, that's essential. Karaites were the Jews who rejected the Talmud that come later on, around the time of Islam, right? And technically you could call that Judaism as well, but essentially we're talking about post-temple period. So I understand why you would have got confused with that. I mean, it gets confusing. First of all, we have the term Hebrews. Hebrew, right, is a term that's in the Bible that Abraham crosses over. It was a crossover, from migration. Then we have the story of Israel being a man who then has a tribe, and so Israel represents a patriarchal founder. Then the tribes, the various 12 tribes that are represented under the coalition of what's called Israel. In the Merneptah stele, we see that it was referred to as a kind of nation people, maybe a large confederation of tribes, or it's hard to tell exactly, but not necessarily a nation state. And then later on, Israel denotes the unification of all of these states under King David and Solomon. And then when Solomon dies, there's a civil war, and there's the 10 northern tribes become Israel, and then the 2 in the bottom becomes Judah. Israel gets destroyed in the north, and then you simply have Jews. meaning people coming from Judea, Judean province, and so that's confusing, right? And then when it comes to modern Israel, it's only existed since 1948 because it was an Arab country, majority country, a province in the Ottoman Empire, an Islamic empire for centuries, called Palestine. And it was called Palestine since early on when the Romans, after the Bar Kokhba revolt, right, if you remember that. And so the modern state of Israel was created by, basically, long story short, 500,000 Palestinian Arabs being expelled to create a land for Jews that were mainly European Jews coming back to recreate Israel and Palestine as a response to anti-Semitism in Europe. And then later they started bringing in Jews from the Arab countries, and many Arab countries responded by expelling Jews from Arab countries, tragically. But this is a modern conflict that I mentioned does not have much to do with this history that we've learned. And that's, again, something important that I wanted you to know. So I hope that this was more helpful and not as complicated. We are taking in a lot of information. I think a lot of you also enjoyed learning a lot about India. Now we're coming into China. So we're just really moving forward like boom, right? So always feel free to call and ask me a question, especially if there's something in regarding to the material that we're covering and you want to know more, or you're just not getting how to write the paper. Please always contact me. I am very busy, but I try to make myself available. All right, so that's it, and we'll be in touch.